Welcome, everyone. My name is Shawn Murphy. I'm a cybersecurity solutions architect here at WEI, and I'm very excited to be joined by Ian Forrest, the Global VP of Product and Solutions Engineering at Hunters. He's got about 20 years of experience in cybersecurity, focused on app and data security, focused on security operations. And where I know Ian is from his stint at Phantom in the SOAR domain when I was his competitor at Demisto. So I'm very excited to be sitting on the same side of the table as you today, Ian, because Ian's a very smart dude. Um, the agenda for today is I'm going to cover very quickly three obstacles that I see for developing the AI SOC, and I'll talk a little bit about what I mean by that in just a moment. And then the bulk of the time is going to be Ian showing us the way forward. I'm super bullish about the Hunters technology and how they're addressing this challenge for our customers. But zooming in on the cybersecurity practice, for the way that I organize in my head all of those different engineers and their skill sets and what they focus on is by creating different practice areas that loosely align to the NIST cybersecurity framework, which is that circle in the middle. So in NIST, everything begins with identifying your assets and the risks associated with those assets, protecting those assets as best you can with a zero trust security posture, and then detecting and responding to threats with your security operations center, and then recovering. Um, so just zooming in on the SOC modernization practice area, and this is an area that's near and dear to my heart. We've worked with dozens of customers over the years on modernizing their security operations stack, and I use this exact same mission statement to guide our efforts. So whether it's a small credit union based in Maine, for example, a customer I just recently worked with, all the way up to multinational corporations that are merging and they're huge behemoths with very mature security programs. This mission statement applies in all cases, and it's simply to detect and respond to threats at machine speed by collecting all good data, by performing analytics on that data, and we'll spend a lot of time talking about what those analytics look like today, and then scaling your ability to respond with automation. So those three underlined topic areas will come back, I think, a couple of times today with respect to the Hunters platform. Oftentimes, when I'm talking with customers about how they're trying to modernize their SOC, I use an analogy. I'm from Detroit, so all of my analogies have to do with cars. So I think about building a modern SOC like building an autonomous car, for example. Um, and why do we need an AI SOC and why do we need autonomous cars? For this reason, because of this guy, um, the distracted, impatient, tired, sick, multitasking, hungry, or potentially intoxicated driver. Uh, they, we have exactly the same issues in the SOC. We have analysts that are also tired. Maybe it's after hours, or they happen to be sick, or they're on vacation, or God forbid they're intoxicated. I have worked on many incident response engagements on New Year's Eve in the middle of the night, and I might have been 3 beers deep. Just saying. So, we need the AI SOC to take a lot of the load off of the analyst in the same way that we need an autonomous vehicle to take the load off of the driver. I'm a huge proponent of the autonomous vehicle because I don't want my 6 and 8-year-old children to have to drive on roads with people like this that are on their phones or they spill coffee in their lap or what have you. And a lot of the technology that you see around autonomous vehicles is now mandatory. Like you need forward collision detection that will see if you're about to rear end the person in front of you and brake, or keep you in your lane with lane assistance. And I think we're going to see the exact same thing in the security operations. We're going to have to augment our analysts' capabilities so that they can be more effective and we can drive better outcomes. Um, Ian, any thoughts on the parallel with the autonomous vehicle before I get into the three obstacles I see?
No, I think definitely. I mean, I was going to say I'm all of these things until you got to intoxicated, and I'm not that behind the wheel. But But yeah, I'm the world's worst driver. I'm a big proponent of autonomous vehicles. But I think the other thing too is like, yeah, I mean, you think about like what the freedom of autonomy gives you in a car, right? Like, it's not just that it's helping you do your job more effectively. It's also allowing you to do other things, like and not like security is beyond the security operations centers, and especially in smaller organizations, like the many hats that you're asked to wear. Um, allows like having more autonomous solutions allows you to do more other things and focus on additional things that also improve the security posture of the organization. And I think yeah, I mean so that analogy works in so many different ways, and I think it's really important. And I think also like when you think about like the measurement of different levels of autonomy. When and like an autonomous car, like there's very similar parallels between like level one, level two, level three, level four, level five version of autonomy, paralleling into the SOC, and like full automation versus assisted automation versus automation with human in the loop versus just like scripts that are running. And I think
Yeah.
with the new types of AI and things that are available to us, we're getting much closer to maybe not full autonomy, but a heavy degree of assistance. And I think that part is really going to free up people to do more and improve security posture in organizations.
And one thing I thought of where the analogy breaks down is, the autonomous vehicle is just driving on our normal roads under normal traffic conditions with the same speed limit. But on the cyber front, we're seeing an increasing volume of attack, an increasing speed of attack, increasing complexity of attack. So it's almost like you have twice as many cars on the road and the speed limit has been doubled. Now go be an effective driver. Um, so it's even a steeper task, I think. Okay, so the three obstacles I see to the AI SOC, and I think there's a lot of them. I just wanted to narrow it down and tee up Ian to talk about how Hunters tackles these effectively. Um, the first has to do with the data. I mentioned in our mission statement, focus on collecting all of the good data. One big trend I'm seeing in the AI SOC domain is this division between collecting data versus querying data. And I think this really boils down to the heritage of the vendor. If they come from the SIM domain, they're going to collect the data and aggregate it into a single platform where you can perform your analysis. If you come from the SOAR side of things, then you might focus on API queries to pull the data out of your domain controller or pull the data out of your firewall and use it in some sort of process. I think there's pros and cons to both of those approaches, but if I were to wipe the slate clean and build a SOC from the ground up, I would absolutely start with collecting all of that data in one place, um, for reasons that will become clear when we talk about the AI and how it feeds on large data sets and it needs lots of context and lots of historical data. The other bullet point there is retention. I was thinking about this the other day and how some vendors in this space, they have a 30-day look back window, 30 days of retention. Well, that would be like clearing your SOC analyst's memory every 30 days. So, they get 30 days to understand your environment, understand your apps, understand your users, and then on the first of the month that they have that like Men in Black clear your memory thing, and they have to start over again and learn the environment again. So having long-term data retention inside of the AI SOC platform gives you the ability to look back and build a better spidey sense for what's normal in the environment over time. The second obstacle I see is sort of related. It has to do with detection content. And I was immediately reminded of this classic XKCD comic about the proliferation, excuse me, of standards and how in the early days, all of the SIM vendors kind of imposed standards on the logs that they were collecting. So you had Ceph and you had Leaf and you had various standards that the different SIMs were creating. Uh, and in the end, we had to create standards to unify those standards. So you end up with all of these different logging formats and all of these different standards for how to generate logs. I'm a big fan of normalizing inside of the platform for consumption by the analyst and consumption by the AI. So now the analyst doesn't need to know if I'm querying IP.source or source underscore IP. They just say, I want to go see the IPs, and the system handles the normalization of the content. Um, Also, when it comes to the detection content itself, so the alerting logic or the correlation rules, a lot of the very large organizations I work with have dedicated detection engineering teams, and they might be plugged into the threat intelligence team, they might be plugged into the threat hunting team, and they work together to find new and emerging threats and build detection logic inside of their SIMs. But for 99% of my customers, that's too much. The SOC can't be expected to build alerting logic for new and emerging threats. So I think a vendor managed content delivers that much more quickly and much more accurately with much better outcomes for the customer. And then the last obstacle was originally context, but I had to rename it dimension so that I have my 3Ds here. I think you need some additional enrichment that's baked into the SIM. A lot of SIMs focus on machine data, but they miss things like threat intelligence, or they miss things like historical details about how cases were handled. So a simple example would be you get an alert. It would be really nice to know that every quarter Jane in accounting triggers this particular alert when she uses some sort of financial reporting tool to report metrics to the board on a quarterly basis. You need that retention going back long enough to see those sorts of trends, but you also need to know the outcome of cases and how they were handled by the SOC so that you can enrich new cases that are coming into the environment. And the last topic, and then I'll pause for comments from Ian and then hand the ball over to him to talk about the way forward, is investigation guidance. So when you have a detection engineering team that's researching threats and they're building detection logic and they're pushing that into the SIM, a lot of times the use case will get lost in translation. So the SOC receives an alert that says this is bad, and they have to go reverse engineer the content to figure out why it's bad or what investigation steps need to take place to investigate that particular threat. So these are the three obstacles I wanted to kind of throw on the table. Ian, any thoughts before we get into hunters?
Yeah, these are some of my favorite topics. I think, yeah, I mean, on data, there's, I think, kind of this movement in the world or in like security right now is like, we can go with centralized collection of data, or we can go take a federated approach to data. Like a federated approach would be more of like an API-based query approach, like get the data when I need it, otherwise let it live where it lives. And on the face of it, it sounds very attractive. I think, yeah, you and I both having like SOAR experience are like, oh yeah, you could totally do that. Get the alert and then ask all the questions and be able to, be very effective and, maybe even more cost effective than centralizing data. But there are a lot of really big challenges with it. I think as a security operations team, you need to be able to investigate things. You need to be able to investigate things probably for longer than, is normally allowed by most APIs for the data that they have. You mentioned kind of the look back period. And I think that's something really important. Like, on the vendor side, like I know how important, the cost of delivering a service is. And one of the things that is the most expensive thing that you could possibly do is hold on to your customers' data for longer than you need it. So most vendors don't want to hold on to data for longer than they need to. And so, you end up having to pay to be able to say, okay, well, I want to hold the data longer. And so now you're federating, and you're paying all the vendors that you're federating to hold the data longer than they would normally be holding it as part of their regular contract. And so instead of having one place where you can keep track of your data retention, you have 20 different places where you're trying to keep track of your data retention. And both from a compliance perspective, from an investigation perspective, I think that represents a lot of challenges. Now, the other component to that, of course, is like, collecting and retaining data all in one place provides, an AI-based solution with a more effective way to be able to search the data and be able to investigate the data in a more consistent manner. It's one interface to be able to ask the questions that it needs instead of, 20 or 40 different interfaces to ask the questions that it needs. One of the nice things about AI is it's super adaptable, but obviously the less parameters that you have, the more the more likely it is to be successful. Now, again, I think it's not an all or none situation, though. I think both you and I also know from the SOAR world that it can be very useful, like especially in like highly dynamic data, to be able to go out and query it in real time, to be able to say, what's the status of this device or this thing right now when this event is happening, like right now when I'm investigating it versus like what was the status of it 10 minutes ago when we last ingested data or something like
Mm.
that. So I think being able to do both is optimal. But centralized log collection, I think, still is probably the way to go when you're thinking about how to structure and build an AI SOC for many of the reasons I just talked about.
Yep.
Uh, and ultimately, I think it's going to win out. I think I even saw a post by one of the startup AI SOC vendors, and they talked a lot about like there's two approaches. There's AI, there's like a federated approach, and there's a centralized log collection. And they were talking about how centralized log collection is largely the proponents of that are vendors that already have a platform versus the AI SOC startups that aren't. And he admitted that the reason that they aren't is because like you can't develop everything all at once. You can't develop an
Mhm.
AI SOC platform and a centralized log collection platform. It's too expensive. It's too time consuming. So you kind of have to, make do with federation until such a point that you have the ability to build the platform. So I think we'll see those converge again, despite kind of two competing movements right now. So that's like thought number one. Normalization, I think this is another area that's really important. We'll talk a little bit about like Hunter's approach to normalization, but the more that you can abstract away, like the details of a specific data source or specific products data, the more usable it is by employees, but also the more usable it is by AI. Like it can ask security questions. It doesn't have to like also be able to be hyper familiar with every single data source. It can ask security questions and get security answers if you normalize the data appropriately.
Yeah.
That piece is also really
That
important.
reminds me of the schema on read versus schema on write debate from maybe a decade or 15 years ago.
Sure.
Uh, I'm very anxious to see how Hunters solves that problem.
Yeah, yeah, I think we have a very elegant solution to that problem. I think because like the one of the challenges with normalization is you develop a standard, you ingest the data, you normalize it as it's been ingested, kind of on write, and that's okay until the standard get updated. And now
Right.
you have a huge migration task on your hands, or you have a real gap in your coverage. So, schema on read then sounds a lot more, valuable. It's like, okay, well, then we can do schema on read and make it more adaptable. But then, maybe you have a little less structure to be able to run the queries in the first place. So I think we've struck a really nice balance here at Hunters, and we can talk about how we're managing that, but and kind of what specific schema that we've chosen, which also helps a lot with AI. But really important piece there. And then I think the dimension thing. This is another piece that I think is really, really important. One of the key things for any kind of AI solution is like how well you're prompting it and like what context and information you're giving the AI to be able to perform its job. And I think one option is you have an AI that you know is built upon detections that it does like that the vendor that's building the AI SOC solution doesn't know, and it's trying to infer like what the intent of those were and what the follow-up investigation steps are. The other is, potentially you have like Hunters, for instance, where we've developed all the detections. We know why we built the detections. We know what the follow-up investigation steps should be, and we can use that to develop better prompts for the AI to start their investigation, to start using.
Mm.
And I think, the prompt that you're giving it and like the contextual information that you might be providing in a RAG model really changes the efficacy of AI agents dramatically.
Mm.
And like our AI, our director of AI research at Hunter is like, I mean, she says it's like magic. Like, it's so dramatically different when you change the quality of the context that you're providing versus kind of having it something go in blind. And I think that part is really, really important. And then obviously having that history of kind of behavior within the organization to be able to draw on, and part of it, an AI's inference of like what's normal, what's not normal, also like highly important, and like just like it would be for a human.
Yep, makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for your comments on the three obstacles. I'm going to stop sharing and hand control over to you so you can share a little bit about the way forward and how Hunters addresses some of these.
Absolutely. I am for just a second because I'm on one screen. You're going to see a non maximized view of my slides for just a second, and then we'll go switch to there we go. So we should be in full screen mode.
Look good. Thank you.
Awesome. Um, yeah, we talked about the AI SOC. I think just like what Shawn was talking about, a little background on Hunters for those maybe who are less familiar. What does Hunters do? We make a next generation SIM for specifically for small teams. Like the challenges that any security team faces are the same across the board. There's more tools out there. There's more threats. The velocity of the threats is increasing. Um, and the number of tools that an organization has in their environment is ever increasing. And so everybody has like very similar challenges, but small teams have even bigger challenges because well, a big team might be able to say, hey, we'll throw more bodies at it. We'll build a detection engineering team. We'll build, a team that's, specifically responsible for only eyes on glass and only responding to the alerts in the SOC. Smaller teams often don't have that, luxury. They have to be, the people that are tuning the environment. They have to be the ones that are configuring the security tools. They have to be the ones that are responding to all the alerts and the SOC queue. And we believe it's it's incumbent upon like the cybersecurity ecosystem to build products that help them do their jobs more effectively. Because while uh, you know um, again, you could scale with more people, like it's not practical and it's not realistic. And ultimately, like even for large teams, like that doesn't work in, forever. At some point, you reach a breaking point and you have to be able to use some other option to be able to scale to like the broader attack that are happening in an environment. And Hunters is leveraging AI and automation to, really, really like try to improve the efficiency of a team and allow for the many complex tasks that small teams and security teams need to, take on and allow them to be able to do that effectively. Um, so, you can see like the way that we built the product is around what we're calling, the AI SOC platform. And, it's built around like kind of three core components. Out of the box content. So content that works out of the box, like most of our customers, once they have data ingesting, have, the system up and running in, weeks, not months, not years. I know that sounds funny to say, not years, but when we talk about SIM, I think many people have had the experience of a SIM, taking a very long time to onboard, and maybe, even having an everboarding experience where they're never not onboarding with it.
An everboarding experience. That is totally accurate. I'm working on a Hunters project right now, and I was blown away at how quickly we got the data in and normalized. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And once it's normalized, then the content starts working. And with every SIM, there's always some tuning period, but we try to make it as easy as possible to onboard. And that happens partially through automation. And we leverage automation to further like triage alerts. Like so I think one of the really tricky things is when you're developing detections, like as a detection engineer, there's kind of two ways you could go. You can cast a really wide net and catch way too much stuff, but just ensure you don't miss anything. Or you can cast a very narrow and focused net, and you'll catch exactly what you were looking for, but you may end up missing a lot of stuff that otherwise would be suspicious. And like so striking that balance can be really difficult if you're trying to do it only with detections and not with any kind of other supplement. And that's where the automation piece really fits in with Hunters is, we have the detection and we have what we would call leads being generated. And then we use automation to kind of help triage like whether that lead should be something that's actually worthy investigation or not. And then finally, the latest and greatest and most exciting thing in the product that is being released is this Pathfinder AI capability, and it encompasses a lot. But Pathfinder AI is Hunters integration of AI into the product, specifically like modern AI in the form of LLMs and generative AI to take the next step to go beyond automation and go to full autonomy, in the investigation process. Uh, yeah, and we talked about many of these things already, but the idea is that we have the content out of the box that works for the vast majority of what you're going to be looking for. We don't want you spending time, building your own pass to hash, detection. It exists. We know what the problem is. We've already written like the best version that we could possibly write of it. There's no reason for you to go and rewrite another version of that same thing. Focus on the things that are unique to your environment. But let us take care of everything else so that you do that. And the really cool thing with Hunters is that you know, our detectors are monitored across all of our customers' environments, and they're tuned in place. So our team is monitoring the efficacy of them, and we're making adjustments and changes of them to improve that efficacy in real time in our customers' environments. So that they reap the benefits of at what we're seeing across the board, rather than saying, "Hey, we're going to push a new version of a detection." We're going to update that version of the detection and make it more effective in your environment without you having to do anything. And I think that piece is really important and really lowers the burden of like managing detection content in an organization. We talked about the AI-powered triage and investigation. We'll talk a lot more about that in a second. And then, lastly is making sure that we have everything that you need to be effective. That not only do we have the detection and the ingest and the search and investigation capabilities, but also the ability to respond within the product. Something, again, that Shawn and I both share in common is that that ability to kind of work with your security investments, have API hooks into them, and be able to get to containment and remediation as quick as possible.
Yeah, it's one thing I would harp on all the time is that a legacy SIM doesn't do anything. It passively collects information and fires off alerts, and you can choose not to look at them and end up in the news, unfortunately. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I talk a lot about that, like with security products in general, like and internally to our teams, is a bad employee is an employee that doesn't tell you anything. That just there's problems and they just kind of let them go and just like watch and kind of watch the car crash happen. A not amazing employee will just point the problems out and just add to their manager's list of things to do. A good employee will point and provide some options of what you could do. And a great employee will not only find the problems, but also provide resolutions to them ahead of time for you. And that's what we are striving to be at Hunters, as a great employee of the SOC.
Awesome. That's a good analogy.
Um, we talk about kind of everything that we do from an AI perspective. I think the point of this slide is not so much like, we do this, that, or the other, but Hunters has been leveraging AI much longer before than, like this notion of AI SOC existed. There's lots of different forms of AI. There's, machine learning, there's graph-based correlation, there's anomaly detection, there's, risk scoring and, all kinds of different things. And we're not new to this. We've been in business for, 7 years, getting closer to 8 years now. And I think the point is um, our goal from day one has always been, how can we, help customers find what's happening in their environment, find the attacks, and not just find them, but investigate them in a way that they can get to an answer and get to a solution as quickly as possible. And we do that through, again, a variety of different things. And I think AI is definitely, AI as we know it in terms of generative AI and LLMs is kind of the most exciting and sexy, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff that has led us to the point of where we are today. Um, I think this is the last slide of kind of like what Hunters is and where we are, but I think this point is really important. It's just like kind of what the life cycle of data looks like when we talk about it going through Hunters. because we are a next generation SIM, and I think it's important to kind of level set of kind of what we do and how we do it, and where this fits into the earlier conversation. We were talking about the hurdles that like an AI SOC has and how Hunters addresses those. We work this slide kind of left to right. We have, all your data sources, and we collect the data from those natively in the platform. We don't, Shawn mentioned, how quickly data was normalized. And one of the reasons that data is normalized so quickly is we don't ask customers to do that on their own. We handle that on behalf of them. We want the data in its native format, whatever that native format is, unchanged, unmodified, and we'll handle mapping it to our schema. And the really cool thing about the schema that we selected is it's OCSF. OCSF is the Open Cybersecurity Schema Framework, and it's an open source framework for describing security events. And I think in the past, like you've seen many other vendors like come up with their own version of a schema. You have Splunk with Common Information Model, you have Elastic with Elastic Common Schema, you have, ArcSight with Ceph. Having all those schemas is great, but the really cool thing about OCSF is you have the 100+ different vendors all working and contributing to the schema itself. And what that means is that it's constantly evolving and changing to match kind of like what a modern architecture looks like, and also what vendors specifically are producing in terms of data and security events. And it's not just one company, it's many companies, and we all have like a vested interest in making sure that it's successful. We talked about schema on read and schema on write. Hunters stores all the data in Snowflake. And the nice thing about that is it scales forever. When we talk about data collection, one of the really big challenges is how do you scale to the data volumes that you see? And rather than trying to build our own data repository, why not take advantage of a company that has billions of dollars of revenue and investment, and let their engineers deal with that problem so we can deal with like security problems. And so Snowflake is our solution to that. And Snowflake has this concept of what are called views. And so we store the data in its raw format, and then we leverage views to modify the data to be kind of not modified, but to represent the data in its OCSF realized form. And the really nice thing about that is, it solves the problem of schema modification. So when there's an update to OCSF, we can change the views that are representing the OCSF data without having to do any kind of data migration or change the actual structure of how the underlying data is stored. So that's kind of the magic of how we've implemented that. And it's a really effective way for us to, be able to normalize the data, be able to allow the data to be stored, unchanged. So for compliance, and then also be able to keep up with schema changes and updates. We talked about detections. They're constantly updated by our team, which is awesome. They're monitoring across the board. Those generate leads. Leads are not necessarily things that a SOC team has to investigate. Those are first enriched, and that can be enriched with data that we have internally, where we say, okay, well, show me the login events associated with this user that was involved in this alert, to help identify anomalies in their behavior. Or it could be, reaching out to third parties like VirusTotal. Shawn, and I've mentioned several times, like my experience with SOAR. This was one of the things that was most exciting for me about joining Hunters is I cannot tell you how many enrichment playbooks as a Phantom employee I have made, or as a SOAR services before I even worked with Phantom, vendor I have made. And the fact that Hunters is taking care of so much of that out of the box, it was just I couldn't get over like how much work and effort that would have saved me had I, had a product that could do that for me. The years that I was working in SOAR beforehand, and I saw Shawn smiling over there. I'm sure he's
Yep.
building different enrichment.
Couldn't agree more. It blew my mind that those features weren't just native to the Sims that I was working with at the time. So
Yeah,
glad to see it's here.
yeah, exactly. And so then we score the data, the leads, and that's based off of both the original data from the alert, but also the context that's brought in as part of that enrichment process. That will determine whether a lead is promoted to an alert and ultimately shows up in the SOC queue or not. And so that is how we kind of triage and limit the number of alerts that you're actually seeing. And then we have what's called threat clustering to kind of consolidate those alerts, similar ones together so you can work on them in aggregate. And then graph-based correlation. So we take all the lead data, we extract like kind of the key elements or entities from it, and we throw them into a graph database. And there's a lot of magic happening behind the scenes, but essentially we build this gigantic graph of all the connected entities in the environment, and then we identify subgraphs that represent attacks that are happening. And so a really cool visual that you see in the product is like, how event one is connected to event two, which is connected to event three, connected to event four, and you can see an attack evolving in your environment, and it can help you identify things like events that individually would not be suspicious themselves, but collectively represent like a broader attack that's happening in the environment. And then finally, we get to the AI assistant component. And this is the piece that we'll spend kind of the rest of the conversation talking about. And this is where Pathfinder, um, our AI, takes an agentic approach to investigating the alerts further. So everything up to this point, in theory, could be done with a combination of SIM and SOAR and a lot of elbow grease. But now is where an analyst would actually need to sit down and say, okay, these are the things that made it into my SOC queue. I have to investigate these things. And what we're saying is, rather than you having to take that approach, we'll let our agentic AI pick up that investigation, investigate it like an analyst would, give you a verdict, and then your job moves from having to perform the investigation yourself to just validating the output of the AI and then deciding on what the next steps are. And that is like, I think, very exciting and really changes the way that a SOC operates. And then finally, we have the automated response capability, which allows you to take actions against your security infrastructure from within the product in a very SOAR-like way. But one of the things that we are actively working on right now is allowing our agentic AI to create bespoke SOAR response playbooks for investigations. So if something is malicious, creating a response playbook that will contain or remediate that event, or if something is benign, creating a tuning plan that will help increase the fidelity of the system so that you can be as effective as possible and get to that containment and remediation component as quickly as possible.
I think that's really valuable. Just a call back to our SOAR heritage. I ended up with huge monolithic playbooks that would handle all of these edge cases and unique one-off situations. And the playbooks became a massive sort of patchwork of different tasks that had to be executed under different circumstances. I love the idea of having the AI generate them bespoke on that particular case because that eliminates a lot of the guesswork and having to think of all those niche use cases beforehand. So very cool. I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, one of the things that I talk to, our product team and engineering teams internally, kind of because I have that sort of background, is exactly what you just said. Is like there's really two ways that customers can kind of go about solving that problem from a SOAR perspective. Is one, they create like very specific, workflows for very specific alerts, which that means that you have to have like, I don't know, hundreds of different workflows. Or you create one monolith, like you said, with tons of different sub playbooks and interconnected like, calls. And that becomes a very difficult project to manage because you make one change here and you didn't realize it affected the other parent playbooks and you just have like this huge sprawl.
Yeah.
So while I do think full automation, like from a SIM perspective or SOAR perspective, is still valuable, I think like our goal of with the kind of bespoke playbooks is like not necessarily having to handle all those edge cases and be able to get to something that is more useful more quickly with much less effort.
Awesome.
Okay, so Pathfinder AI, we talked about it. It encapsulates all of our AI capabilities. There's two sides to AI. I think this is an important conversation to have. There is this concept of a co-pilot, and there's a concept of agentic AI. So a co-pilot being something that you can interact with and you ask questions, very chat GPT. And agentic AI is a little bit different. This is an agent, not an agent like something you would install on an endpoint, but an agent that exists in cyberspace that is acting on your behalf. It is making decisions and performing tasks on your behalf without human intervention. In terms of hunters, like we have the concept of being able to have a lead summarize or an alert summarize for you, kind of in more of a co-pilot fashion. We also have the ability to like ask a question and have it translated into a query that then you can execute. But in terms of an agent, that's where we have like our agentic AI performing its investigation. And we will talk more about like that, and we'll look at a quick demo, and then we'll probably wrap up this conversation. But when we talk about our agentic workflow, we talked about a lot of things on this slide that we've already talked about a lot of things on this slide. We have data coming in from our data sources. We have our detection engine that's being updated real time. We have the kind of automation workflow that's happening to pre-triage the alert. And then the alert shows up in the SOC queue, and that's where the human starts investigation. And that's where our agentic AI picks up. And it's a multi-agent system. So we have an investigation orchestration agent, and it's developing the investigation plan. But I think this piece is really important. We talked about context as being one of the major hurdles for AI SOC. Hunters is not taking an AI, just some AI off the shelf and saying, hey, go investigate this alert without, maybe having a cool prompt about telling it how it's like a super awesome cyber guy. We have we have built our detections with a lot of other content, and it's so great that we have such an amazing team at Hunters that did this, and without the foresight of necessarily knowing that the AI was going to be a thing. But when we develop our detections, we develop the detection, but we also do what's called a content committee. And in that content committee, we document the detection, what an attacker is trying to achieve if the thing that this thing was trying to detect is detected, what an example of a true positive look like, what an example of a false positive looks like, how would you perform follow-up investigation steps if this alert fired, and then if it turned out to be a true positive, what would the follow-up actions be? Like, what should your response and remediation be? All of this content was created just because we wanted to make really good detections. But now that the AI exists, we've taken it, we've made it available kind of as a RAG model for our AI to be able to leverage. So when the detection fires, AI gets it in the SOC queue, it's able to pull that information and use that as the basis for its investigation plan. And I think this part is really important because, like I mentioned, the context that you provide in AI is all the difference. It's magical how different it is between no context and good context. And this is like our kind of secret sauce to making this work so effectively. But it develops the investigation plan unique to that investigation. It will then deploy agents to determine which tasks specifically need to be run, then which tools need to be leveraged, collect a bunch of different information, collate that information, bring it back to the investigation agent. It will say, do I have enough information or not? If it does, it'll get to the conclusion phase. If it doesn't, it will go and add more steps. And just like an analyst, it will say, yeah, you know what? We got this search result. Let me pivot off that search result and see what that user was up to. And let me see what that IP means. And let me see what this hash means that was returned. And really take those investigation steps to a place that requires some level of nuanced reasoning that you couldn't do with automation today, and you can do with autonomy provided by the AI agent. But ultimately, we'll come to a conclusion of malicious, and we'll develop a response plan for how do you respond to it, or a conclusion of benign and develop a tuning plan to increase the fidelity of the solution. And ultimately, that's how our solution works. And I can show you a video of what it looks like kind of at the end of Q2, which is right now. We just now have this live version working in the product, which is very exciting. And then what it'll look like at the end of the year as we get to that point where we're developing those bespoke response plans and tuning plans as well. So we are in Hunters, we're in our SOC queue. Things are prioritized by risk level. One thing I should point out is that at first, at the end of Q2, we've kind of developed a push button. So you push the button to have the AI perform the investigation. But the end of Q3, which is what we're actively working right now, it'll automatically do that. This was just the fastest way to get this out to the door and start getting results. But ultimately, we see a conclusion now that the AI, generated. We see a description of how it came to that conclusion, and we see key findings associated with that. Like what were the things that contributed to that conclusion? And one of the things that's super important, I think, for any AI-based solution is being very transparent in how it's coming to the decisions and the outcomes that it's come to. And so we have this view investigation report button that ultimately opens that investigation report on the side and shows you every step that the AI took to investigate that alert. But not only the step, a description of what it did, why it did it, what it found, and then specifically what you just saw was the details of the data that was returned by that investigation step at the time that it was executed. And that part is also really important because if it was just like a query that it ran and you have to run it yourself, like that's good, but data changes. Like maybe you invested more data and like you need to know what information it had at the time that it ran the investigation in order to validate whether it made the right choice or not. But the other really important thing here is this investigation report on the right side shows the steps that contributed to the finding, in this case of it being malicious, but also steps that didn't contribute to that. So you can see everything that it did. Because sometimes you'll look up an IP and you'll say, yeah, there's a normal IP. This came from, Minnesota, and we have a guy that works in Minnesota, and there's nothing malicious about it. But it's important because you need to be able to validate and feel comfortable that an AI agent that's working on your behalf is doing all the things that it should do to properly investigate an alert. And so transparency is really key for customers to be able to trust the solution, for SOC analysts to be able to prove to their managers and to CISOs that they can rely on a solution like this to take that burden of investigation off their plates. And so once you've decided that I agree with this conclusion, you can accept it, and we will match
What's going on?
the classification of that. And then
What?
the
I got you.
someone's super excited about but then you have the ability to reject it as well and say, you know what, I don't agree with what you found here. Reject it and say, I give a reason why I'm rejecting this, and then we'll use that to improve the AI. So, super exciting. And like I said, this is brand new, hot off the press. Like this, literally, like I have a working version of it, literally right here. This is me in the product. And this is an investigation from our internal environment. And we have, our conclusion of benign in this case, but a really nice conclusion as to why it determined to be benign and like how did it find that? And our full investigation report of exactly what happened with details of, what it did and what it found. And then, the complete virus total report, all available. And then any questions and queries that it ran, in there ready for you to evaluate. And like I said, this is
I appreciate you showing us a benign one because that's 99% of what you're going to deal with are benign cases. And you always see the nasty ones that are like very, very malicious and obviously malicious. So yeah, this is the normal day in, day out.
exactly. And you know what? I was kind of bummed actually. I was going in our environment, and to your point, like I saw a lot of benign and like every sim vendor wants to be the one that catches something bad, and we do catch a lot of bad stuff. But to your point, most of it is suspicious, but then turns out to be benign. And like when you do the investigation, and the thing that I really was like, while I was bummed when at first I was excited when I read it. I was like, oh, this is a really nice explanation as to why it's benign. Uh,
Mhm.
and like, yeah, I agree with it, and like I don't have to do anything else. So it's amazing. And it really shortened the amount of work that I needed to do to investigate that alert. So I'll just show one more quick slide video, and I'm going to skip to the middle of it. But just to kind of give you an idea, you'll see the UI looks a little different because this is an earlier version of what we were planning to do. But in this case, we had an outcome of something being malicious. And, again, the thing that we're working on kind of the next quarter and the quarter beyond is this ability to have it generate response steps. So a very simple SOAR response playbook bespoke to this alert that here's the automation steps that you should do to take advantage of this. And you hit execute and it'll go run those steps. And get you to like the fastest possible resolution as possible. Now, I will say we don't want our AI to automatically execute those steps. uh, because Shawn, you might have had this experience. I know I did. Even in the SOAR, where you're designing the playbooks, customers were often very skeptical, not having themselves in the loop.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
I use this example a lot because I just thought it was funny. I'm sure the customer didn't think it was funny, but I remember getting a call one time that like the customer was in a panic because they said they shut off Mexico. Uh, I didn't know what that meant, but it didn't sound very good. And they had a workflow where they had it fully automated without any human in the loop. And it ran into an case that they weren't accounting for, and it ended up turning off a lot more than they were expecting. And so
Oh,
yeah, initially, we want the AI to propose automations and allow you to choose to execute them or not, just like you would ideally with the source solution. And then as you get more comfortable and we get more comfortable, like maybe we, in some cases, can promote some of the suggestions to full automations, if they match certain requirements.
yeah, like if your confidence score is 100%, then yeah, sure, go ahead and execute it. But if it's even 99%, I'd like to glance at it before it shuts off Mexico.
Yes, exactly. I'm sure the Mexican citizens would also agree with that.
Exactly.
Um, uh, and then, in the case of something being benign, I think this is another thing. Like, one thing that as a SIM vendor that I see often is that, not always as much effort like there's a lot of effort into initial tuning of an environment, but sometimes, once you've tuned an environment, there's less credence and less heed paid to like ongoing maintenance. And you say, oh, the same alert fires all the time, and nobody actually goes and puts in the thing to make sure that it doesn't fire anymore. So this is designed to make it as easy as possible. Like I say this, it just disappeared off the screen. But hey, this was benign, and we noticed that in this instance, this particular device is a frequent cause of false positives. So if you wanted to improve the efficacy of this alert, like put in this ignore rule and we'll automatically create it for you. You'll never see this alert again, or you'll see it with much lower frequency. And so really designed to help improve that fidelity without, a lot of extra burden.
I used this exact example earlier with your vulnerability scanner generates a lot of noise, and you might tune for your existing vulnerability scanners, but then 3 months down the road, your VM team adds a couple more scanners to the mix, and now you have a bunch of alerts. So it's excellent that it's tuning the detection logic too, not just responding to the malicious incidents.
Yeah, exactly. And like to your point earlier, like most of the day is validating that things are really benign and that like while they were suspicious, like they might be less as they're not actual malicious behavior. And I think ultimately like something that's self-tuning or like at least close to self-tuning, like will reduce those overall occurrences and reduce the number of things that you even need to review, let alone have fully investigated. So I think with that, like your path to AI SOC starts here. We're very excited about what we're building. I think um, there are many AI SOC vendors, startups, and compete in this space. But I think one of the things that Hunters has a huge advantage of is, the scale of data. Being built on Snowflake allows us to scale to massive amounts of data. But also, the fact that we are collecting all the data, we are normalizing all the data, we are, constantly tuning our environment, and we have built those content committees. It really has allowed us to build, the foundation for like a really, really exciting AI SOC vision, and really, helps us, move towards our future of like reducing the burden on security operation centers and teams, and help them be more effective and ultimately like help the world be a more secure place. And I know that sounds like kind of like a, I don't know, cure world hunger, but like I mean that's the vision that we have. We're here because everybody at Hunters is like a passionate security person, and that's what we want. We want the world to be more secure, and I think the more autonomy and more automation we can provide, the more likely that is to be the scenario.